The back room of Burke's saloon reeked of whiskey, sweat, and fear. May's wrists were tied with coarse rope, the fibers cutting deep into her skin. Lily crouched beside her, smaller, younger, shaking so badly she could hardly breathe. Burke towered over them, a cruel smile twisting his face. Sykes leaned in the corner, fingering a knife, his grin wide and eager. 2 men, 2 shadows, and no escape. You can't pay me in coin. Burke growled. Then you pay me in flesh. May's heart thudded against her ribs. Her mouth was dry. Her lips split from the slap he had already given. She saw Lily's terrified eyes, wide and wet, pleading without words. Her sister was only 21. Too young to endure this nightmare. Burke yanked May up by the arm, his breath hot against her cheek. You or her? Your choice. His hand traced the rope line on Lily's arm. Lily whimpered, the sound breaking May's resolve. May closed her eyes. She felt the weight of shame crush her chest. She forced her voice out, trembling, broken. I took it off. Please. Let her go. Her words fell heavy in the room. She was not naked. Not yet. But she felt broken inside. She had given up her pride, her body, to protect the only family she had left. Lily cried out, straining against the rope. No, don't. Please, somebody help us. Her voice cracked, echoing through the thin wooden walls of the saloon. In the front room, Jack Colton heard it. He had come for nothing more than tobacco and a quiet drink. He was a man who kept to himself, gray at the temples, shoulders bent from years of ranch work. But the sound that reached him now was not just a cry. It was the echo of a past he had buried. His daughter had once screamed like that. Before the bullet, before the grave, Jack set his glass down. He rose slowly, boots heavy against the wooden floor. The piano man stopped playing. The few drunks at the bar glanced up, uneasy. As Jack pushed through the door into the back, the sight froze him where he stood. May, her shirt torn at the shoulder, her eyes filled with despair. Lily, tied and sobbing, begging for mercy. Burke looming over them, his hand on May's arm. Sykes, smirking, knife catching the dim light. Jack's breath caught. The room tilted. For a heartbeat, he was not in a saloon, but back on that night 10 years ago, when his daughter had begged for help and he had been too late. His jaw tightened. His fingers twitched near the gun at his hip. Burke snarled when he noticed him. This is no business of yours, old man. Turn around. Jack did not move, his eyes locked on May's, on the silent plea written there. A woman ready to sacrifice herself, a sister ready to give her life for family. The air hung thick, charged, ready to shatter. Jack's heart pounded like a drum against his rib. He had sworn never again, never to draw, never to kill. But here it was, the same choice, the same question. Would he walk away and let history repeat itself? Or would Jack Colton act tonight and change the fate of 2 broken sisters? Jack stood there, silent, eyes fixed on the 2 sisters. The whole room seemed to hold its breath. Burke's hand tightened on May's arm, his grin curling with arrogance. You heard me, old man. Walk away. But Jack did not move. His jaw clenched. His hand drifted closer to the revolver resting on his hip. The years of rust in his soul cracked just a little. The weight of every choice he had made pressed down on him. May looked at him, her eyes begging. Her lips trembled, but no sound came out. She was out of strength. She had given everything just to keep Lily safe. Burke laughed, sharp and cruel. This one already offered herself up. Said she took it off. What a brave sister. Maybe I'll take the young one after, just to be fair. Lily cried out, kicking at the rope around her ankles. Her voice was raw, desperate. Please, mister, don't let him, please. That cry snapped something deep inside Jack. It was like thunder rolling through his chest. In one smooth motion, his revolver cleared the holster, gleaming under the flickering lamplight. The sound of the hammer pulling back was louder than any gunshot. Sykes froze, his knife still half raised. Burke's grin faltered, his face twitching with sudden fear. Nobody in the room doubted that Jack Colton meant every ounce of that cold stare. Untie them. Jack's voice was low, steady, and it carried more weight than any shout. It was not a request. It was law. For a moment, Burke hesitated, eyes darting between Jack's revolver and May's trembling body. For the first time, Burke's grin cracked. Folks in this town still whispered about Jack Colton, the old soldier who never missed. And Burke was no fool. Then, with a curse, he yanked the rope loose. Sykes stepped back, his knife clattering to the floor. May stumbled forward, her knees weak, pulling Lily into her arms. They clung to each other, shaking, tears running down their dirt-streaked faces. For the first time that night, they felt a sliver of hope. Jack kept his revolver steady. He knew better than to lower it too soon. Men like Burke only understood the hard edge of steel. Finally, he spoke again, his voice even colder. "Get out of here, both of you." Burke spat on the floor, humiliated. But he backed toward the door. Sykes followed, his eyes burning with hate. Before leaving, Burke hissed, "This ain't over. You'll pay for this, old man." The door slammed shut, the sound echoing like a warning. Silence filled the room once more. May turned to Jack, her voice breaking. "Why would you help us? You don't even know who we are." Jack holstered his gun, his eyes heavy with memories too painful to speak. Instead, he only muttered, "Because someone should have helped my daughter. And nobody did." May blinked, unsure of what to say. Lily clung to her sister, whispering through tears. "Are we safe now?" Jack's gaze hardened again. He looked toward the door, the words of Burke still hanging in the air. Safe, not even close, because Burke was a coward, but a coward with power. And men like that never let go. What would happen when he came back with friends? And maybe the law on his side. The night outside the saloon was heavy with silence. The sisters held on to each other as if letting go would mean falling back into hell. Jack walked beside them, his boots crunching on the dirt, his eyes scanning every shadow. They reached the edge of town, where his old horse waited, tied to a post. Jack lifted Lily up first, her small frame shivering in the cool air. May followed, her voice still trembling. "You didn't have to save us. Now Burke will come for you, too." Jack gave a small shake of his head. "I've had worse men than Burke come for me. And I'm still here." It was true. His voice carried the weight of years, scars, of a man who had outlived too many storms. But deep down, he knew this storm was not over. When they reached his ranch, the place looked worn and tired, but it was shelter. A single lantern lit the porch, casting long shadows across the dry yard. Jack led them inside, poured water into tin cups, and set out bread from a cupboard. The sisters ate in silence, too hungry to speak. Jack sat across the table, watching them, remembering nights when his own daughter had sat in that same chair. The memory cut him deep, but he kept it hidden behind a face carved from stone. Finally, May broke the silence. "What will happen when Burke comes back?" Jack leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. "He will come. He is too proud to let this go." Then he looked at May straight on. "But when he does, he will find he's not the only one ready." Lily shifted nervously, clutching the tin cup with both hands. "Are you saying you'll fight them? You're just one man." Jack let out a dry chuckle, one that sounded more like gravel. "One man with a steady hand and a clear conscience can be enough." The sisters glanced at each other. For the first time since that night began, a flicker of trust passed between them. The wind rattled the shutters. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote cried out. The world felt like it was holding its breath for what was coming next. May lowered her voice. "Why us?" "Jack, you don't know us. Why risk everything?" Jack stared into the lantern flame, the answer heavy on his tongue, "Because too many times I stayed quiet. And people I loved paid the price. Not again." The room fell silent, the kind of silence that lingers in your chest long after the words fade. And friends, if you want to hear the rest of this story, if you want to see what happens when Burke comes back and tries to settle the score, then stay with me. This tale is just getting started. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because Jack Colton's fight is far from over. Morning broke over the ranch with a sharp chill in the air. The sisters barely slept, their eyes heavy with fear and doubt. Jack was already outside, feeding his horse, moving slow and steady like the world had not turned upside down the night before. May stepped onto the porch, pulling her shawl tight around her shoulders. "You really think Burke will come back today?" Jack glanced at her, his face unreadable. Burke is the kind of man who does not like being shamed. Men like him always come back. Lily appeared behind her sister, clutching a tin cup of coffee too big for her hands. Her voice wavered. What if he brings more men? What if he brings the law? Jack stopped, looking out over the dry field. The law can be bent. Men like Deputy Crow have been in Burke's pocket for years. That makes them worse than outlaws. The sisters exchanged worried glances. They were safe for the moment, but safety felt like a thin blanket against a cold wind. Later that morning, Jack saddled his horse and rode into town. He left May and Lily at the ranch with strict words. Stay inside. Do not answer the door. If trouble comes, head to the root cellar and stay there. The saloon was buzzing when Jack walked in. Burke sat at a table with Sykes, and sure enough, Deputy Crow was there too. His badge catching the light, his smirk just as crooked as his soul. Well, well, Burke drawled, loud enough for the room to hear. The old rancher thinks he can play hero. Paid off my debt. Did you think that makes those girls free? The crowd went quiet. Jack kept his voice steady, calm, but every word cut sharp. They are free. And if you ever lay a hand on them again, you will answer to me. Crow leaned back in his chair, tipping his hat with a sneer. You talk big, Colton. But you forget. I carry the law in this town. If Burke says those girls owe him, then they owe him. That is how it works. Jack's eyes locked on Crow's. For a long breath, no one spoke. The weight in that silence was heavy enough to crush the air from the room. Finally, Jack said, slow and deliberate. Not this time. Not while I'm still breathing. The saloon stirred. Some folks nodded. Some looked away. But every man and woman there felt it. A storm was coming. Burke's grin came back, sharper than before. Then I guess we will see who this town belongs to. And with that, the line was drawn clear as day. Jack knew the fight had only begun. But when Burke and the law come knocking on the ranch, with the whole town watching, what chance does one old cowboy really have? The day of reckoning came faster than anyone expected. By noon, dust rose on the horizon, a sign of riders coming hard. Burke, Sykes, and Deputy Crow led the charge, their faces set with arrogance, their hands never far from their weapons. Jack stood on the porch of his ranch, rifle in hand, shoulders square against the weight of years. May and Lily stood behind him, fear in their eyes, but also something more. They were tired of running. They were ready to stand. Neighbors began to gather, drawn by the noise, by the tension. Men and women of the town who had suffered in silence too long. They watched as Burke shouted, pointing at Jack, calling him a thief, a liar, a man who sheltered debt dodgers. Crow flashed his badge, claiming the law was on his side, but Jack's voice cut through the air, steady and strong. You all know the truth. You've seen the bruises. You know what kind of men these are. The law is not a badge. The law is justice. And justice has been missing in this town for far too long. The crowd murmured, the tide slowly shifting. May stepped forward, pulling Lily with her. Her voice shook but did not break. We are not the only ones they hurt. We are just the ones still standing. That was enough. The people found their courage, one voice at a time. Burke's power crumbled in the open-air truth. Crow's smirk faded as men he had once bullied now closed in, demanding real justice. By the end of that day, Burke and Sykes were bound with rope, marched off to face judgment beyond the town they once controlled. Crow stripped of his badge, left to answer for his corruption. As the dust settled, Jack lowered his rifle. His chest heavy, but his eyes lighter than they had been in years. May stood beside him, her hand brushing against his, a silent promise of something new. Not just survival, but a future. And here's the lesson, my friends. One man may grow old, may carry scars, may even believe his best days are behind him. But when he chooses to stand, when he chooses to do what is right, he can still change everything. Courage is not about being unafraid. It is about acting even when fear is all you feel. So let me ask you, if you were Jack, would you have walked away or would you have stood your ground? And if you were May, would you have found the strength to speak when silence felt safer? These are questions worth carrying long after the story fades. If this tale moved you, if you believe more stories like this deserve to be told, then give this video a like. And do not forget to subscribe. so you can follow every new chapter we share together. Because the Wild West may be gone, but the lessons it left us are as alive as ever.